Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, and I have a special guest with me on the podcast. I have Eric Stevens. You know him as writing for the Orange County Register and now for The Athletic. You also know him on Twitter as Iceman Cometh. Thanks for coming on the show, Eric.
No problem, Mike. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
So I guess there's a couple burning questions going on with this team. The team has obviously lost their 12th game now playing Detroit. And right before this game, the Ducks made the trade for Andrew Cogliano to be sent to Dallas, and they ended up getting Devin Shore. A lot of people upset about the trade emotionally. What did you think, your initial reaction when this deal went down, Eric?
Well, I tell you what, the good thing with my gig right now is that, you can sort of, sit back a little bit, maybe stand back from it, try to look at it from a number of different sides, a number of different viewpoints. I get the emotional aspect of it. There's no question. And on a personal level, Andrew Cogliano was one that was a reporter's, best friend in terms of, wanting to get the, know about the pulse of the team in good times and bad. He's just that quality of a guy and someone that exhibited class and professionalism. But if you look at the trade, okay, on the surface, there's different levels. Financially, it can work in their favor in the sense of Devin Shore comes back, but they'll save, maybe almost $1 million, per year, in terms of the salary cap and actual dollars.
Right.
Plus they get they get an extra year of flexibility because Shore's deal is for 2 years, whereas Cogliano just started his 3-year extension. So there's that. And then there's also, the age factor,
right.
The recognition that, look, this is a transition year. And then Bob Murray has made that clear. I think we all see this. So this is another part of that transition to going, working in younger players, working in a different mix. Andrew Cogliano, he's probably, not probably, we know what he can do, but he's reached his ceiling, as a player. And this team is no longer a real cup contender as it is now. So, he's probably better served being on a team, a more veteran team, a team that's more ready to be in cup contention whatsoever than what Anaheim is right now. So, there's that in terms of, getting younger as well. And then, but also, is this a sign or, is this a little bit of a message sent to the players that are in the room, the supposed core players that are remaining? I mean, this is the first piece, basically, that they're chipping off of the group, of the core group, that sort of carried this, team, from 2013 to 2017 and put it in contention, for a cup, even though they didn't get it done. Andrew Cogliano, I don't think it was his fault by any means, but here's the background here. But this is really not on him as a player. He's certainly not the reason why they are losing the way they are. He just has a more movable contract, and one that's more appetizing to a team right now. But maybe this is a little bit of a sign, to some of the remaining members of the club that that they have there as a GM that is willing to make some player moves to shake things up.
Yeah, and I think that's something a lot of people looked at in this trade. And I kind of wrote about it in one article about him sending a message. I mean, with everything that happened and is still happening with this team, do you think that is what he's trying to say, is that, hey, anybody can be moved at any time? Obviously, not people with the no movement clauses and whatnot like that. But do you think that's kind of what he's saying is, hey, if you don't perform and you don't step up, then you could be shipped out?
I think if not as direct, if anything, just sending maybe a little message that, you know what, you're not entirely safe. Yes, there are players on this team that have no movement clauses. There are players on this team that basically, that frankly, aren't movable. And you can name them. We know who they are. Ryan Kessler, Corey Carrier, the first ones, obviously, that come to mind. And Bob Murray handed out those deals. And at the time that they were done, you could see reasons for handing out those deals. But they're basically unmovable. So the ones, the ones that, that are, and particularly when we had a conference call with him yesterday, he pointed more at the 20s, as he put it, the mid-20s group. We're talking about guys like Ricard Raquel. I mean, you can go through it. I mean, Ricard Raquel, Hampus Lindholm, Josh Manson. I mean, that's that type of core that we're talking about. And he's talking about those players needing to step forward and step up during this long streak of adversity here. Maybe that's one of those things where it's saying, look, yes, we've made commitments to you, but you're not entirely safe here. And their contracts are certainly more movable, and their contracts, and they are players that certainly would be, more appetizing to other teams, the way at their age and at their ability at this stage of their career. So there's a number of that. Again, you can look at that deal with a number of different levels, to it. It's you can look at it on the surface, but there's other underlying levels that could be with this.
Well, another player's name that comes to mind, and was on TSN's radar and a couple other people's radar, is Jakob Silfverberg. There was talk about him in the beginning of the season. Now there's talk about him again, and then it seems like Murray came out and said, no, he's been producing for this team. He's been one of the bright spots in this team. What's your take on his situation? Because he's a pending UFA. Do you think that he could be next, or someone that teams are going to be calling about?
Well, teams are going to call about if they haven't already. There's no question. I mean, the longer he's unsigned, the way that they're going certainly right now, obviously I wouldn't be surprised if teams have already called Bob about him. It's pretty simple. And as you laid it out, Mike, he's a pending unrestricted free agent. He's going to. His next contract is going to be a fairly sizable one. He's at the age where he would want a sizable long-term, contract. Being 28 years old, this may be, I don't want to say it's the last big money deal, that he can make, but certainly this is the one where he can try to maximize his value as much as possible. So yeah, and he's going to have interest. There's no question. I mean, he is one of the team's best defensive forwards, if not, if you can make an argument that at this stage right now, he is the team's best defensive forward. And he can still, even though he can be a streaky scorer, he can still get you, perhaps 15 to 20 goals, especially if you play him, with some offensive-minded, players. So there is going to be interest. Bob coming out and saying that, he would like to take one more crack at signing him. I do believe that he would. I do believe that he would want him. Who wouldn't want Jakob Silfverberg on their team? Let's make no mistake. But you have to weigh where they are at. As a franchise, where are they at in terms of being one that can contend for the playoffs or one that needs to rebuild? And you have to contend with his age and how many years that he's going to want on this deal. You have to contend with all that, and you have to contend with the offers that you could get when we get down to February 25th or get towards that date and the deadline. So there's a lot certainly to think of, but there's no question that Jakob Silfverberg is going to be an attractive piece on the market for teams looking to maybe make that next step and make a legitimate cup run.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, right now he's leading the team, with 12 goals, and he's got 7 assists. So just like you talked about, that 15 to 20 goal mark is definitely not out of reach this season for sure. And it's a contract year as well. And like you said, could be his last big money deal too. So that's all things to factor in. What about tonight? Do you have any update? He got injured and left the game. Have you heard anything on his status? Because, that could, maybe affect something. It looked like he took a hard hit to the knee or lower leg area.
Yeah, you know what? Nothing definitive. From that, talking with Randy Carlyle afterwards, he had no real update, but that's often the case.
Right.
With things, usually the update on a player isn't going to come to, isn't going to come for a day or perhaps two. They'll be reevaluated in the morning, and we will see just how extensive the injury was. I can say that I did see him afterward. He was in street clothes. I think he was talking with, if I recall, I think he was talking with either a Red Wings player or, no, actually he was talking with Sean Orkoff, who's in the Red Wings organization. So he was upright. He wasn't in a cast.
Right.
I can give you that. I can give you that. The chew on. He didn't look like he was in distress. So perhaps I'm certainly no doctor by any means, but perhaps it's a thing where it may just be a day-to-day thing and really not impact him long term. And
what were your thoughts or anything on Kessler as well? He obviously took a hard hit in the game. He went out and then he came back in. We all know that the hip, of course, is never fully 100%. But any status update on him additionally?
Yeah, no update on him as well. I didn't see him afterward, but as you perfectly stated. The hip's never going to be 100%. That's just going to be it's an arthritic condition,
right?
So it's never going to be completely right. We shall see. In terms of him and his availability for the Minnesota game upcoming and beyond there. Yes, obviously the numbers aren't there.
Right.
He's obviously not at near the level that he once was. You do have to credit him for being a gamer and gutting it out. The guy really does want to play. Yeah, again, he's not nearly the player he once was. But he is one where he's been at he's been at the majority of practices. I mean, this is not a case of where he's just showing up for games and he's taking a lot of maintenance days like last year when he came back from the injury. He's been one where he has practiced, more often than not. So he's given it the old college try. He really is. But but with that point, getting hurt today, we will see what his availability will be for the remainder of this week.
And before we get to about the coach, just one other update too. Anything on Patrick Eaves as far as maybe playing on this road trip or at all before the All-Star break?
Yeah, excuse me. He didn't make the trip. There was. We talked to him before that. He sounded very confident. It sounded like he thought it was a possibility. But I don't know if he had a definitive setback. But he has had setbacks, during this, obviously, in his inability to, make the jump from, being a practice player and skating in regular lines or whatsoever to obviously, having the ability to return to the lineup. There's clearly a bridge that he's been unable to cross just yet. So we'll see. Again, I don't know if he's had another definitive setback, but clearly his appearance or his non-appearance on this road trip, could indicate that he was just not at the point to where he could, continue to make progress here.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I guess the big thing that we can kind of go into is really this whole thing that Murray had talked about as far as, I'm not going to make a coaching change. That was after the 11th loss. And then he was talking about, focusing on the players. And then, of course, as we started, we talked about Cogliano getting shipped out. What is your take? I mean, there's so many people that are, fans and other people in the industry like yourself that are looking at Carlyle, and, they had the 7-game losing streak in the beginning of the season. Now we're on the current 12-game streak. What is your take, with Murray, sticking to Carlyle? Is there any reason why you think he's still doing that and not looking at a coaching change and instead is focusing on the players? Because I think that's a burning question for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, well, to go by what he has said and what he has done in the past, Bob Murray has always considered a coaching change as a last resort move. He's told me that he's become a much more patient person and patient general manager over the years, over his 10 seasons. In the big chair in Anaheim. Hey, if you're a coach, that's the kind of GM that you want, one that's not going to panic in tough times here. But listen, we're at 12 games now.
Right.
It's embarrassing. I mean, yeah. It's getting toward the point where you don't want to say it's comical. I mean, it's not funny in the room by any means. I was just in the room not long ago, and it's almost inexplicable what this team is going through and trying to explain their mistakes and trying to explain their losses. Whether you think that, how much blame should be laid at Randy's feet, whether you think he's 1,000% responsible for this, whether you think he's 10% responsible for this, I just think it's gotten to the point where you may just have to make a change just for change's sake, just for the players in the room. You can't fire all 20 players. You can't get rid of all 20 of them.
Exactly.
And so again, maybe this is not all Randy's fault. Yeah, there is some that is. You can go through his strengths and weaknesses as a coach, and he has said it himself. That he doesn't feel. He's not immune from criticism. I talked with him earlier today, and he indicated that to me. But again, it becomes a thing where you almost have to do it just to send a message to the players and actually send a message that, okay, now you've changed out, you've gotten rid of a very valuable and committed, player that was with this club for 8 seasons,
yep.
Fan favorite.
Yep.
Okay, so you've done this. And now if you've changed the coach, now the players see, okay, it's on them now. It's truly on them. So that's sort of that's really the feeling that that I've come to, the fact that you just may have to do this just for the sake of the room and just for change. Just something has to change. You can even call it mojo. Something has, but it's funny, but it's not funny.
Right.
Something has to change, and maybe you just need to do it, even if you don't feel that he deserves all the blame or all the fault. Hey, you got to believe that if this continues, if it goes to 13, 14, I don't see how any coach could survive that.
Well, that's the other thing I'm wondering too. Is it seems like obviously everybody's upset. There's a lot of heat on Randy Carlyle. How much of this heat do you think has been translated now to Murray himself? Well, like you said, he's being very, very patient. And a lot of us out here, the patience has been gone, a few games ago. So, how much heat do you think he's getting now? Because obviously we know Carlyle is getting plenty of it. But what do you think, with Murray and his patience and whatnot?
The longer that you stick with him and the longer that the streak continues, the more it kind of starts to come back on you, like you alluded to it. And I truly believe that he knows that. And maybe it's maybe it's very convenient that he was able to negotiate that extension that he signed recently.
Right.
I don't want to speculate too much, into what's in Bob Murray's head.
Right.
I'm not in his head. Yeah. I don't know. And so I'm not. I try not to speculate too much, on what a person is thinking. But again, like I said, if this continues and there is no coaching change, then yeah, it starts to, it naturally would start to, look back, on Bob himself and whether this, this is a smart decision or a foolish decision or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I mean, in terms of the team, if say he doesn't do the coaching change and we stick with Randy Carlyle, we look at the players, like you said, you made them one message of trading Cogliano, one of the most popular players, not just on the team, but, in the NHL, even when he was suspended, we saw everybody's comments, and how we all felt about that suspension. I'm not going to go on that tangent, but as far as this team and say, if we focus on the players, obviously we know John Gibson. I can't even begin to start with what he's done for this team and help this team in this whole season. But in terms of offense or defense, where do you think they do try to improve this team, with the trade deadline coming up and whatnot?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure you can improve this team.
Mm-hmm.
At least for this year. We will see what they do over these next, say few weeks. These games, the rest of this trip, really, the games leading up to the All-Star break here.
Right.
And then perhaps, there's another big trip that they have right after the break. I think these will make some real determinations as to, if they just fall completely out of this, then you'd have to think that, one of the directions that you will look to is trying to, get some futures in terms of, possibly another high round draft pick, or working in another prospect in the system. But hey, let's remember that San Diego Gulls are looking mighty good, and the prospects that are doing well, and you go through the list as far as Troy Terry and and Sam Steele and even Max Jones is also really starting to make his way there. They weren't ready, but they're still pretty close.
Right.
And so he's leaving them down there to stay in a very positive atmosphere, a very confident atmosphere, letting them continue to build their confidence, so that if he keeps them down there for the entire year, that one or two of them, or whoever, and we can add Max Comtois to the mix once he finishes, his junior career.
Absolutely.
Perhaps that they will be much closer to being ready, and perhaps 1, 2, or whatsoever will be able to become NHL regulars. I'm not sure how much more you can do with this season,
mm-hmm.
and even we see the wild card race,
right?
And it's a slow crawl.
Oh yeah,
it really is a slow crawl between the teams that are involved. Even if they were to somehow emerge from this and somehow wind up with a playoff spot, how far are you going to get? Is it really worth subtracting to add a piece that may not even get you past the first round? Is it really worth that? So I think I do believe in. Hey, think back to last year, but Bob didn't really make. He did not make a big move.
Right.
And I think part of that was because deep down he knew that he didn't have a team that was capable of making a real run. I truly believe that. So I think he knows that. I think he knows, and he made it clear the other day. As the way this team is going, he feels it cannot win It's not a playoff team. If they are able to stumble in somehow, I think it will be still largely the same type of group. I would say, as of right now, my money would be that they would be more sellers at the deadline as opposed to being buyers.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think so too. I think that's where they're at. And, I hate to admit it, being, a big fan of this team for a long time, but I agree with you. I don't see them being a playoff team now. I think in the beginning of the season, they had a chance, with this losing streak, they are 500, which is crazy. I mean, they are right there at an even record, despite these 12 losses. But even with that, and like you said, the slow crawl to the wild card spot, or even making it in there for the playoffs. I don't know how you feel, Eric, but I almost feel like maybe this team is kind of sliding more towards a rebuild mode instead of trying to be a contender, because I don't think they can make enough moves to get to being a contender.
Trading Andrew Cogliano is a sign of that. It's a start of it. It's a sign of it. I think the trick is, and the key is, and with the prospects that they do have, and with the younger core that they do have presently on the team, the trick is to not make that retool. You can call it whatever you want: retool, reshape, rebuild, whatever. Right. The trick is for that to not last for years.
Right.
And we've seen other teams and other organizations deal with that and continue to deal with that. I think that's what Bob is looking at in terms of, transitioning this team, making it younger, but also making it one that's going to remain, at least remain competitive, and not be one to quote unquote tank. Because knowing him a little bit, knowing him as much as you can know him, that's a direction that he does not want to go. He does not believe in that. Some teams have succeeded, others have not going that route. He's definitely one not to go that route.
Well, I guess one other thing to think about too is if he doesn't go that route, and say he still tries to make some moves and get this team into a decent position for a playoff run or whatnot, if they get to that. But if they don't, and like you said, they're looking at the younger guys, the Comtois, the Steeles, the Mac Joneses and whatnot. What would you do with Dallas Eakins if Randy Carlyle is to be booted? I mean, is Dallas a guy that you would leave in San Diego to keep grooming these younger players? Or is he someone that you would look maybe at the end of the season or even next year to replace Carlyle?
He would be a logical successor. Look, he wants another crack at an NHL job. He wants another crack, in the league. In fact, I believe he interviewed for the Arizona job when it was open. I think he interviewed for another one, but I'm not exactly sure which team it was. So he wants back in. And I think it's logical. I mean, he signed a multi-year deal. I think earlier in the spring. And he's coached. Not only he's coaching the player, the prospects that are there now, but he's coached a number of players on this current roster as well. Is he the 100% successor? I wouldn't say that it's 100%. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the coach in waiting or anything like that. But I think it's very logical that he would be looked at as a replacement. If and when we were to go down that route in terms of finding someone that will succeed Randy Carlyle.
Is there any other coaches that come to mind? NHL, AHL, anyone else that if it got to that point to replace them, that or names that you would think that could be up there as front runners or at least serious ones for Murray to look at?
I think it's a little early to say at this stage. There's nothing. They still have a coach right now.
Right.
They still have a coach right now. And so I think it's really a little early to say. I mean, we know some of the names that are out there: Joe Quenneville, Tom McClellan. Two that come off the top of your head. They've interviewed Mike Yeo in the past. There's even Dan Bilesma that's here in Detroit as an associate to Jeff Blashill. That's some names to think of, but whether they're on that list, whether they could afford any of them or whatsoever, I think that still remains to be seen. And again, I think this is still quite early in this because, again, they still have a coach that they have in place right now.
Yeah, exactly. At least for the next game, as far as we know, unless something changes in the next night or two. I guess just to kind of wrap up, the only other thing I would really say is as far as trying to improve the team. I noticed that Pontus Aberg had been scratched the last couple games, and I saw you post a tweet about some of the comments with that. If this team's trying to get back in the right direction, they're trying to score. Obviously we know the problems they've had with offense. We've seen some of the issues with the power play. What's your take on benching him? Because I've seen some fans pretty upset about that. I get it, the defensive game, he's concerned about that, but 4 games, it seems maybe a little much. I mean, I don't know. I know sometimes you want to, again, trying to send a message and you want someone to wake up and perform a little bit better. But what's your take on him being out for, now 4 games?
I actually thought that I'm going to the morning skate today. I thought myself that if it were up to me, I would have maybe put him back in. I think you sent your message, with
right.
With that in terms of sitting him for 3 games. You put him back in. You hope that you get what you would want, which would be someone that would be maybe a little bit more determined. You have to remember, and you do have to look at, yes, everyone points to, yes, he has 11 goals. Yes, he is capable of offense, no question. He wasn't playing particularly well, though, in the run, leading up to that. A lot of players weren't playing well. But, you can see, you can buy some of Randy's argument in terms of the fact that he was playing a lot more on the perimeter. He wasn't, necessarily as engaged as some of the other players or some of his other teammates, were. He's never been known as, particularly a strong defensive player. And with Randy, that you at least have to try to commit, to playing some defense in your own end. But that said, if it were up to me or whatsoever, I would have, put him back in and hope that 3 games, would have been, enough of a message to say that we need more from you, whatsoever. But I do buy the argument that this is a team that needs gold and they only got 1 tonight, and so you never know. You add that up, and you can see why fans would be frustrated and upset with leaving an offensive-minded player in the press box.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you look at this team and, there's only a handful of guys that, basically have over 10 goals. You're looking at Getzlaf, Aberg, Kasse, who was out for a little bit, and obviously he's back in Silverberg. So, you got one of those 4 out. So that's been a concern. And another thing that kind of talked about on my show and kind of get your take on this too is, obviously the Ducks have been leaning on Gibson this whole season. That's just, everybody knows that. It's not a big surprise or anything like that. But given what's going on right now with this team, do you think that maybe they should put Miller in there a couple times to give Gibson a break so he's not getting overworked in some of these contests?
Yeah, and I know you were thinking of Chad Johnson. I know you were thinking of him. So
and Johnson too, yes.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I thought that this morning tonight would have been maybe one to throw Chad again here. Again, and I know it sounds weird. I bring up the word mojo, but look, it kind of works in hockey here. And this team needs something. It needs some type of change, shift, or whatsoever. So. Why not give John a break here? Give him a night off, from it. It can't get any worse,
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. Really, John Gibson, yes, he is your best bet in terms of, trying to, get a win, obviously, but, you also have to maybe look at the little, bigger picture and maybe look at the other side of it as well and see that, it hasn't been working with him. He hasn't been able to, just completely steal them a win. So why not, go with Chad? They in the in the 2 or 3 games that he's played with him, they played fairly well in front of him. Maybe that would force them to play much tighter in their own end. Knowing that they've got their backup in that. So, if it were me, I would, if they have the back-to-back, it's a natural thing, this weekend where you can get a game. But I could have certainly seen, him playing tonight, against a Detroit team that's, not very explosive, whatsoever, just to give John, a little bit of a mental break from this.
Right. And as we were talking about, on the show before when Miller was healthy, we were talking about that. Then obviously now Johnson's in the mix. When is Miller due back? Any change in that? Is it still the same prognosis for him coming back?
Probably before the end of the month. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see him until after the All-Star break. I mean, it was more going to be the end of January, the beginning of February in terms of the original timeline. I mean, I haven't seen anything that's changed with that.
All right. I guess just the final thought on this team as far as going, in the second half of the season. Do you think I guess your final word, do you think it's better if they do try to push and make the playoffs? Obviously you want to turn around and win some games, but are you okay if they don't make the playoffs and they try to, go after some younger players like they did with Devin Shore? Or what do you think for the, final part of this second half of the season?
Well, I think there's still quite a few, quite a few prideful players, in that room. That are going to want to make a push. They don't want to be in this for the rest of the year. But that said, again, I'm not in Bob Murray's head.
Right, and that's a hard place to be.
But I'm sure he wouldn't. But I'm sure he wouldn't mind. He wouldn't mind having a chance at a top 10 pick or something that he doesn't get very often. So. Whatever the scenario leads out, again, this is a team that's not going to win the cup.
No,
it would
I
be
agree.
a miraculous ride.
I agree.
This is a team that's not going to get really close to it. So, I think I think there are fans, and I think there are people maybe even within the organization that wouldn't mind a step back here. Wouldn't mind a step back here. To kind of reassess things and then maybe make a real another step forward or so in subsequent years.
Yeah, because I think last season what was frustrating too is you saw this team. They came back in the second half like we've been accustomed to, and then of course getting swept by San Jose, which was frustrating. But it's been a weird year. That's the only thing I can really say as opposed to recent years, Eric, is this team, they start out slow in October, November. They pick it up in the end of December and January, and then they carry it through into the spring. And then this season's been kind of a mixed bag where they started out, winning games, and they went on a losing streak, then they got back to winning, and now, going through the end of December and January, they're losing, obviously a bunch of games. So it's a weird season. Of the recent ones that we've seen, I think that's one thing we can agree on. It's going to be an interesting ride, through the end of this regular season.
They always make it interesting, one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate you taking out your time. I know you got to get up early and get on another flight and get to the next game. I appreciate, all your advice and help over the years when I've been doing this. And, you're always been a professional and a great gentleman and a good friend to talk to when it comes to hockey. So I appreciate it a lot, Eric.
Well, thank you, Mike. Likewise, I've always enjoyed our conversations, and I really appreciate it.